You are now tuned into Flippin' the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to episode 143 of Flippin' the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese, and soon we'll be joined by Zach Travalella to bring you the ultimate Dallas week talk. It sucks because
I'm excited. I am ready to go.
And as we were discussing before the pod, like I'm nervous. I'm allowed to be nervous, right? At the end of the day, but first, before we jump into Dallas week, I mean, we have to go over the Cardinals and Eagles matchup just for the simple fact that there's a lot that transpired in that game, and there's a lot that was revealed in that game as well that a lot of us, I don't think we're expecting to see. At least from my point of view, I feel like Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon put their tails between the leg and just kind of played scared for a little bit. Didn't see much pressure from the defense, a lot of prevent defense, and the offense was unlimited screen passing, which I get. Defense was blitzing, but there's a lot of quicker passes in the NFL than just screen passes.
Yeah, I mean, you got to work in some slant routes. You can do the bubble screens with Dallas Goedert. They were pretty effective, but I mean, go to the college playbook, run some angles. Something across the middle, confuse a middle linebacker or something. Crossing routes, drags, things like that. Yeah, it would be nice to see another way to alleviate pressure off of the offensive line and Jalen Hurts by just mixing up some routes like that. Something that really stood out, though, that you kind of hit it on the head was the Eagles they don't really know how to close out games. That's becoming an issue, not against teams that can put points together, whether they're the Cardinals, whether they're the Lions. We've seen dominating performances, which is stunning as to, when you watch this defense against the Minnesota Vikings and kind of how they sputtered and didn't really assume control too much in the Arizona game. It was closer than what it needed to be. And Arizona, when you are this far away from going into overtime against a team where a fan in their apartment needs to set up another fan and blow another TV to give you some extra juju. It leaves a lot to be desired on both sides of the ball.
See, I was fully prepared for this game to go into overtime and for the Eagles to blow it in overtime, just because it felt like they went into the game without an actual game plan from beginning to end. I mean, not much A.J. Brown after the first quarter. I mean, he only had 3 catches for 32 yards. Dallas Goedert, astonishing. He was the man of the hour, but it wasn't so much against a defense that, as we discussed last week, lacked in the perimeter. They didn't have cornerbacks that could keep up with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. So the fact that we didn't target our wide receivers and give AJ Brown, who actually is probably one of the better wide receivers in the league, and when it comes to Yak, give him the ball. It just showed a lack of awareness from Shane Steichen, and even Nick Sirianni at one point, as Jalen was coming off the field, was kind of like, "What the hell was that?" I think it was like a 3rd down play or a 4th down play, and he was even confused. And it's funny because Chargers fans and media analysts as well, when the Eagles hired Shane Steichen, they were concerned that he was going to bring that same style offense that the Chargers had in the beginning of their season before Justin Herbert broke out to the Eagles. And he did. He literally just did that against the Cardinals, a team that could possibly, you'll possibly see in the playoffs. And you really kind of just it was just weird. It was weird to see that. I feel like we were playing Madden for a couple minutes.
Yeah, it was kind of odd to see exactly how many targets. I don't know. It kind of seems underwhelming when I watch AJ Brown and the amount of targets that he's getting versus what I think in my head, that he should get a game. I'm thinking, and by targets, I mean, this should really be he should leave each game with around 8 catches, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
He's a possession guy, and you can take those, those bigger chunk play risks with Smith or you could do it with Brown as well. I mean, Brown can, is absolutely physical, but I look at Brown as a guy that probably should be targeted a little bit more often. And there are times where I'm not sure that we have a plan to really get away from throwing directly to Goddard. Like Goddard really kind of bails out the team often enough on every single third down. What's going on, Zach?
What's going on, everybody? Happy 5-0.
Oh, I know. I mean, hey, we're nitpicking. We're nitpicking crazy. I love the 5-0, but like there were
there's a lot of holes.
Addressed.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't watching that game freaking out the entire time on Sunday. Just between watching the good old fashioned scared defense that we saw being called, with the prevent, taking a look at the offense, and I get what they were going for in the first half, and then Arizona adjusted in the second half, and they sent more of a heavy blitz over Jalen Hurts' way, and they just tried to counter with screens uncontrollably. So it just there's a lot to learn from it, but
absolutely,
a win is a win. So
I agree with that. And to kind of respond to Corey, because Corey's mentioned that the O-line wasn't strong enough, and I get that, at the end of the day. But let's be honest, we can't glorify the Eagles' offensive line saying they have the best offensive line in the league and they have the best depth in the league if we're going to use that as an excuse when the offense is looking bad. But to his point, play calling was terrible. I mean, again, it was so lackadaisical. It wasn't creative.
That's what we're saying. We're saying that the play calling wasn't, adaptive to what the defenses that we saw. There should be another focal point on this offense full of weapons that it gets, that you're attacking these defenses from all areas, and we kind of looked one-dimensional.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, it was a rough. It was. I mean, to me at least, it doesn't like Jalen said. Like I don't want to hear 5-0. Like that wasn't a 5-0 win. I get there's gonna be close games, but close games should bring it should be because you're bringing your A game and the other team's bringing their A game, not because your offense is playing scared and your defense is following the same pattern. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know. My screen's completely froze. So
yeah, mine froze too. I was just like, wait, what happened? I'm trying to wait for the end of this. We'll edit that part out.
But listen, we spoke about Cardinals, Eagles, and that's not what it's about. It's about the Eagles being 5-0. It's about the Dallas Cowboys being 4-1. It's about Michael Parsons versus Jalen Hurts. It's about AJ Brown versus. Is Trayvon Diggs playing this season?
I haven't heard.
Not making any noise
about him. I mean, I haven't heard much of anything about him, honestly.
Yeah, so it's about that. It's about the rivalry. It's about Sunday night football. And again, like I said, I was telling Eric offline that I'm petrified of the defensive line of the Cowboys, just because if we're not really going in with a strong offensive line, and we're not going in with a strong offensive game plan outside of the first quarter, then at the end of the day, you're shooting yourself in the foot. The run game was just not there. The pass game was just Dallas Goedert screens, Devontae Smith screens, and that's not going to work against Dan Quinn and the Dallas defense.
And I'm sure as soon as I say that, I haven't heard much about Diggs this season. If he is I'm sure I jinxed it. I'm sure I'm jinxing it. I'm sure it's going to happen against us at some point. No, I'm not. You're worried about the defensive line and how our offensive line matches up to it. That's a fair assessment. Do you think Mel Lotta will be returning this week?
I would hope so. I haven't heard anything about on the injury report about him.
I know that he had missed time, and I don't think that he played much, if anything, against the Arizona Cardinals, correct?
No, he was out. Yeah,
he was out completely. But Driscoll held his own. I think that the fear of the Eagles is the interior offensive line, because Landon, was in and out. I think was Opeta covering for Landon, or Sam Allen was playing majority of the game.
Opeta was in for Landon, and then Jerkins came in for was 1 or 2 snaps for Kelsey.
For Kelsey, yeah,
really, and really all it was.
Yeah, we know what to expect from the center position, but it's just the interior part, that left guard position, that's going to be a little concerning. But Michael Parsons is going to be going against, either Lane Johnson or Jordan Mailata or even Jack Driscoll, who I believe can hold his own. But it's still,
I would say that if Mailata is missing the game, that you're going to see him testing Jack Driscoll all game long. You're probably not going to see a lot of Micah Parsons on Lane Johnson, at least if Mailata is out, just because they're going to be, pushing Jack Driscoll in hopes that he just falls apart. But it's going to be a really good test for Driscoll. Hopefully, so it's a lower body injury for Landon Dickerson. He had that foot injury earlier in the year. It could still be that, could be something different. They just like in hockey terms, so they always go with a generic lower body injury,
correct,
just to kind of not give out a lot of information about what exactly it is. So, depending on what it is, how bad it is for Dickerson, if it's something that's still going to cause him problems, I'm not overly. I respect the Cowboys defense because for the first time in I don't know how many years, it's actually a talented squad. It's very talented pass rush. They have the ability to cause turnovers, create turnovers. Linebacking core is fine. Really good in coverage, actually. They're one of the best teams against tight ends in the league as far as giving up yardage. So it's going to be a tough game for Dallas Goedert. But getting back to the pass rush, as far as that's concerned, as long as, obviously, ideally, you have everybody full health. But as long as I think Landon Dickerson is there, and this is not a boon against Sua Opeta, it's just if you can get one of the two, if you can get one of Mailata or one of Dickerson, then I feel a lot better about it. Just because it's having two backups and that communication, because that's the big thing with offensive line is communication. In addition to having to be talented at your own position, you have to be comfortable and have great chemistry with one another on the offensive line in order to get everything from snap counts to pass protections correctly. And pass protection is going to be huge. Like run blocking, that's something that every offensive lineman loves, but pass protection, that's something they're going to need to be a well-oiled machine against, especially against this pass rush.
And to those points, I hear you saying that how well Dallas defends against tight ends, so the pass rush, and hopefully you'll be able to sustain, block some sort of pass protection. How do you think that will affect Dallas Goedert? Do you think that he'll be limited in a sense where the Eagles have to be forced away from him as a safety valve? And do you think that turns into a productive week for A.J. Brown?
I would say first and foremost that they're going to try and get A.J. Brown involved. They really they didn't last week against the Cardinals, at least compared to Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. And Cardinals are one of the worst teams against tight ends, so it made sense that Dallas Goedert was going to do well, be a big part of the receiving game against them. I think what you might see some extra 12 personnel even try and get some blocking fronts up against the Dallas Cowboys just to give Hurts a bit extra time. So I think, yes, you're going to be looking at more of a backseat role for Dallas Goedert. You're going to be looking at more of a assisting the pass block game, especially considering the Eagles don't have a great pass blocking running back. When you look at Miles Sanders,
they get lost back there.
No, yeah, I mean, Miles Sanders has been fine. I would say that
Kenny Gainwell gets lost back there.
Kenny Gainwell's awful back there, for being honest. So to try and reinforce that and give Hurts a little bit extra time, you're probably going to be looking at some Jack Stoll out there and some 12 personnel alongside Dallas Goedert, and hopefully they can create enough time for Hurts. But yeah, I think you're looking at a big, an attempted big game for A.J. Brown, and as always, Devonta Smith always.
It's the perfect stage for A.J. Brown. Like, this is exactly what you traded A.J. Brown for, to show up on the biggest stage against your biggest rival and to show the league that, the Eagles belong. One little wrinkle to add is Andre Dillard was activated last week and that 21-day practice window.
Okay.
I would think possibly maybe if Mailata can't go. I mean, if Dillard is in there, I'm very, very confident. Just
very
because
confident.
we know,
Okay.
we know what Dillard's capable of, and he's a first round pick for a reason. If Mailata wasn't part of this team, Dillard would be the guy. So if Dillard's there, and they have Opeta inside, or they have Landon Dickerson, then the Eagles, the offensive line is gonna be stout. It's gonna be really good. But it all depends who is covering left tackle, like Zach said.
Like I understand that you would be more confident with Dillard in there. It's kind of the devil more than anything else. I think unfortunately one way or the other we're going to see Hurts be forced to one side of the field, and we're going to test that theory against the division rival. That's
And it
what's
sucks
going to
that
come down.
it sucks that it has to happen with them of all people.
And I like one of the comments right here. We need to run Miles more. That's absolutely true. You're going to have to mix up that threat with Hurts and any one of our running backs. It can't be just Miles. Everything has to happen because that the Eagles live and die, and not die, but like a lot of how they thrive and extend these leads, we clearly see are through the rushing game. So
and
that
it's
cannot
interesting
leave.
that comment is there. They have to run Miles more. So Miles Sanders throughout the weeks, right? Week 1, rushed 13 times for 96 yards. Week 2, 17 times for 80 yards. Week 3, 15 times for 46 yards. Week 4, 27 times for 134 yards. And then against the Cardinals, he rushed 15 times for 58 yards. The run was there at the end of the day. Like, it really was. There was no pop in the run. There was no success in the run at all, which forced the Eagles to have to rely on the oddly to say screen pass, which for some weird reason as well, it worked almost every single time. Like, the Cardinals just couldn't stop the most obvious play that was happening. But again, I mean, it's about Miles and Kenny. That last drive against the Cardinals when they wasted 6 minutes off the clock. Kenny was on his P's and Q's. Miles was on his P's and Q's. Jalen was running as well. That was the most effective that the offense looked all game long. And if you want to beat the Cowboys, then it's got to be that same kind of style offense.
Yeah, they basically looked like West Virginia's offense back when Pat White and Steve Slayton were on the team. Everything was kind of proactive through the bubble screen and different running, sweep outside or through the tackles, things like that. And there was here and there was a shot downfield, but it seemed like everything happened within 0, 3, 5 yards. Yeah, as far as the Cowboys are concerned, it's going to be one of those games where it's a statement victory, and they have to dominate this game. They have to win by more than a possession. This has to be a 10-point win at the least, and it's got to look sturdy, because they're coming off of kind of what we were touching on a little bit earlier. The Cardinals game was one of those games where the Eagles were going to kind of come back to earth, and they did. They can't stay at earth or go lower than that, because that means taking a loss against a division rival that might come back to haunt you down the line. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this being a statement game, and hopefully, at home against not a division rival, the division rival. It's got to be one that looks pretty. Honestly, it's got to be a definitive win, whether Cooper Rush is the quarterback, or rumor has it this morning on a Kincaid show they were kind of leaning towards Dak maybe comes back too.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Has to. I'm always a little rough with, because if you leave 6-0, you leave 6-0. But to your point, Eric, like this is the Cowboys. Like this game is about more than just this week. One, you have just one game separating the two of you in the standings. Two, they've gotten this far without their starting quarterback, who is supposedly coming back, if not this week, probably the following week. So they're going to get better, is the point, and that's in theory. My underlying, you could call it a hope, I call it an educated guess, is that when Dak comes back, things kind of fall apart. And that's not even necessarily anything against Dak Prescott, but more so what the Cowboys have done to succeed is to focus on defense and the running game. It's not that much different than what the Eagles did last year. You look at their running attack that's focused around Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. They run it down your throat. Cooper Rush has done enough to not lose them games, but he's not out there, throwing 303 TDs every game, And then you have the defense, and it's a bend, don't break defense. They're pretty average as far as the yards they give up, every game, except for tight ends, which I mentioned. But when you look at how few touchdowns they give up, I mean, I'll go over their ranking. When you look at touchdowns for passing touchdowns allowed by the Dallas Cowboys, they are number 5 in the league. They're top 5. When you look at touchdowns, rushing touchdowns by running backs, you go ahead and look at that, and they are top 3 in the league. Like, this is a team that does not let other teams get in the end zone. What does that sound like? A rushing team that has a bend, don't break defense? That sounds just like the Philadelphia Eagles last year. So when you have Dak Prescott back and you try and go back into that pass-heavy offense, that throwing for 300-plus yards, trying to win the game in the air, that's not the same recipe of success that they've been following all season. So anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent now about where I think the Cowboys will end up, but you want to kind of knock them into that. You want to make them feel that pressure so they feel like they have to adjust into that. And that's done by having a big statement game on Sunday. Is it home or is it away?
I looked it up earlier
home.
and it's home.
It's in
Philly.
Philly.
All the more reason, bring them here. Don't let them hear a single thing at the line, right? Everything's got to be silent for them up front because you can't let them hear each other talk. That's the big thing. Like, as big as the crowd was last week in Arizona, now we're in Philly.
Yes.
Right?
There's going to be no
people
Cowboys
have to show up. Yeah, that's the problem. That is the one problem with Philly, is that there's somehow a decent amount of Cowboys fans. But I'm not worried about the noise from the Cowboys fans.
It's not going to be there.
I'm feeling pretty confident in the fans' ability to take over the game, be that 12th man, as it were, really help the team out. The only way that kind of gets taken away is if the Cowboys deflate the Eagles early. But again, they're not that kind of style of team, unless it's done through turnovers on the defensive side. They're not going to be throwing, 90-plus yard bombs that would shut up our crowd. The only way it happens is if you make, Jalen Hurts turn over the ball like twice early on. So I feel pretty good heading into it. It is definitely an important game. It's much more important than Arizona. It's going to be more important than, I think it's Pittsburgh when they come back from the bye week. But it's definitely one of the highlight games of the entire season for Philadelphia.
And it's definitely an interesting matchup because looking at the Cowboys schedule, right? Week 1, they lose against the Bucs, which is week 1. It's like the 4th preseason game. It is what it is, right? But then they face the Bengals. Not a great offensive line at all. Of course, the defensive line is going to shine. Then they face the Giants. Not a great offensive line at all. Defensive line, of course. The Commanders, same spiel. The Rams, same spiel as well. So you're facing a different breed in Philly, which is it's the little bit of confidence that I have is right there. It's because you have consistency on both sides of the ball with Philly. You have a great defensive line, you have a great offensive line. What it's all going to come down to on Sunday is Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen. Those are the two. It doesn't matter who's on the field. If these guys can't call the correct game, if your defense is not playing aggressive Philly football like they've been playing for the past couple of weeks before Arizona, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. If this offense is not putting the ball into the hands of a Quez Watkins deep, Devontae Smith in the middle, A.J. Brown in the middle, A.J. Brown deep, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. At the end of the day, you got to stick to your guns. And it drives me nuts that I don't understand why Steichen saw the blitz and said, okay, like we're only going to lean on Goddard and Smith, and let's lean on the screen pass. Like, you could have done so much more to be creative with A.J. Brown, who, again, is probably the better wide receiver in the league when it comes to Yak, and the ball was not in his hands at all in any of these screen passes. You could have done a lot with Quez Watkins if you put an extra blocker in there and you throw, a little play action pass to Quez Watkins deep. Like, you could have been so much more creative, and it wasn't there, and it blows my mind as to why it was not there.
And you saw it, all season so far, then it just kind of disappeared. So yeah, it was a little bit shocking just to see that. I do wonder what happened to Quez Watkins really since he caught that touchdown pass earlier this year, because it seems like he just kind of disappeared from the offense.
I think it's hard to
Yeah,
keep him consistently
that's
there.
kind of his role.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that he's not going to be a guy who's out there, for 60, even 50% of the snaps,
Right.
because he really just what he did, that I think it was a post route he ran, that kind of running streaks, running posts, whatever the case may be, like that is his bread and butter. He's kind of like, you talk about like a change of pace back. He's a change of pace wideout. So they're going to roll out with Zach Pascal for most of the time. Helps in blocking fronts as well. Helps the run game a lot. Secure hands. More often than not, except for that one turned into an interception that we had against the Jaguars 2 weeks ago. But for the most part, Zach Pascal does a pretty solid job of doing the little things. And then when you're ready for that, to kind of throw that change up, that's when you put Kes Watkins out there. Now, why they didn't do that against Arizona, who's really to say? But against Dallas, that's definitely something that you could potentially see coming up, because even if you get him matched up against Diggs, which is a possibility, because I don't believe Diggs doesn't travel.
Nope.
He plays the side of the field.
Yep.
So you match him up against Diggs, that's absolutely an opportunity to blow right by him.
And
we
Diggs
all know
how much forward.
Yeah, we all know how many yards that he gives up. So it's definitely an opportunity to try and line up against him and really make a big play happen with Kes Watkins this week.
And as far as the changeup is concerned with Quez Watkins, he is a deep threat. He has the speed. He's probably one of the fastest players in the NFL. But why not make him the screen guy? Kind of make Goddard an equal.
He doesn't have much agility, if I'm being honest. He doesn't make guys miss. He can't find holes. He's really like a straight, and when I say down the field, like, again, I'm not saying he can't run a post. Obviously he can, but he's not a guy who's gonna cut back and make everybody miss, like I'm saying. So that's why I never really liked him in the slot either, unless you're running a slant in man coverage and hoping that he just beats out his man.
Right.
There's really not a whole lot of benefit there to him. You try, and Brian's right, they did try him in the screen game before, and I think that's what they kind of found out, is that he's just a little stiff. So you want someone who's a little shiftier. That's why Devonta Smith is a good fit there. Dallas Goedert, they love the tight end screen, which
it's a unique
I'm always a
screen
little wary of. It always looks a little odd when they do it, but it's effective.
It looks really weird.
Right.
It looks so weird, but it's effective because I guess nobody's expecting it, because you look around, how many tight end screens are really run around the league now?
I mean, it takes a certain kind of tight end, and I guess that's the
Sure.
reason why it was so hard for it to be stopped against by Arizona, because Goddard might be that sort of athletic tight end that we see. Not to really say he is a Travis Kelce, but he certainly does have the athleticism of a Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the profile of the Travis Kelce.
He's on the lower end of that archetype. There's really no one like Travis Kelce. We saw that, just last night with 4 touchdowns. But yeah, when you look at that archetype, you could even say, Darren Waller is kind of one of those like lower end guys in that kind of just athletic tight end kind of role. So it is something that occasionally works out for him. I wouldn't be surprised by the trade deadline. I think that there's good odds that the team adds either a back or a wide receiver, and the kind of player that they're looking for, could be, well, if it's a back, someone who can pass protect and probably has a little more, junk and can push the line a little bit. But as far as a wide receiver, if they do look to add a guy, they're probably going to look for a little toolsy, quick, quirky kind of guy that they can run out there, almost as like theoretically like a Boston Scott type that you're going to run out as a wide out as opposed to at back.
I wonder who that would be. I mean, who out there is available?
I mean, you got to think about who's available. That's the big question. Exactly. Who's available?
Now I'm curious.
I mean, we looked at, the Carolina Panthers. Everyone's talking about a potential fire sale with them. Well, first of all, no one fits that mold. If you look at receivers they're going to give up, maybe Robbie Anderson, but Robbie Anderson's really a Kes Watkins type. He's a guy that you really just, you tell him to go long. That's it. Every single down, go long. And if you're open, we'll get it to you. But when you look at the Panthers, otherwise, there's not really a whole lot there. So it's going to have to wait until the deadline, because you're going to have to see how there's just so much parity right now in the NFL. So you got to see how these standings fall a little bit more. You want to see some of these 2 and 3 teams come down to like 2 and 5. Once you get kind of around there, you might be able to pick someone off of maybe the Patriots or possibly would say the Texans is if there's anyone worthwhile on that roster other than
there's
Brandon
somebody
Cooks.
worthwhile
It'll be
on
Brandon
the
Cooks.
Patriots.
Yeah, but
We can bring back
they
Nelson
love
Aguilar.
Brandon
Well,
Cooks.
he was
We can
dying to
bring
say
back
Aguilar.
Nelson Aguilar. We can
Yeah,
totally
Nelson
do
Aguilar
that.
got me exactly 0 points on my fantasy team last week, so
That's
he's
why I
officially
dropped him
banned from
too. That's
Philadelphia.
why I dropped him too.
Officially banned from Philadelphia just because of that. So I'm done with the Nelson Aguilars, but there's not going to be any way to really get him. But like Myers out of Patriots is super interesting, I think. But it's that kind of guy who can really work well, specifically out of the slot. If the Saints decide to sell, which I don't think that they will, I mean, you could take a flyer on like a Jarvis Landry kind of guy. That's still a possibility.
Or the other kid that they have there. His name escapes me, man. He's a speedster there.
In New Orleans?
Yes. Number 10.
Talking about Shaquan Smith?
Yes. He's a very underused
I remember
player.
him causing Philly, like a little bit of issues here and there,
He was blowing up a little bit like Gabe Davis, and then he just fell. I mean,
yeah.
With the quarterback carousel and the coach carousel going on in New Orleans and the injuries, you're not really going to get much pop at him. But you could definitely get get him for like a 5th or a 6th, and use him to be that that game changing kind of player.
Yeah. Well, when you look at teams kind of selling off, it's also kind of difficult because you look at it, the teams that are going to need to sell off may not necessarily want to, like Detroit. They should be sellers at the deadline, but they're very dedicated to competing no matter, how bad their team is. So they're going to continue to fight, for instance. So you don't really think that the Lions might give up anyone. The Saints seem to still be trying to push. They don't have their first round pick, so they're not tanking for anything, and then you got to look around the league and think, well, what makes sense? Are the Commanders going to deal with the Eagles? It's possible, but probably not. And even then, it's not like you're getting Curtis Samuel,
Brian Burns from Carolina, bring him to Philly. How about that one? Let's get a little defensive out here.
Burns. I would love Brian Burns. There's absolutely no shot that they deal him at the trade deadline. There is not a single chance that they do that.
What about Terrace Marshall Jr. from Carolina? This is what his second
ask
year.
Liam about that. Liam's a big fan of Terrace Marshall. No, he hates him.
I love Terrace Marshall. That's why I brought him up.
I loved him coming to LSU. I was a big fan of the guy. Now, he hasn't really done anything. Is that you can't really judge that fully, though, in Carolina because they've just been so awful. Yeah. Is it the quarterback play? Is it how the game is called, from the offensive coordinator? Another guy who I know he's already been dealt once recently, but if Laviska Shenault is ready to be on the move again, this is another Carolina guy.
That's a creative move. That's a very creative move.
I'd be totally down for that.
There's a few things he can do as a utility guy on this team. So yeah, that's something that I would look at as a low risk, high reward because you don't know what could be of him, but you're not going to pay too much for him type of deal, I guess.
See, but the thing for me is like going back to what Zach said, like getting a back that could do it all, getting that back like a Darren Sproles again, what they want Kenny Gainwell to be, or what they want Boston Scott to be. Right. Getting that guy that could, be under control for the next 2 or 3 years, or being that guy that could, not only can he catch the ball, but he could be effective running the ball because, like, we're going over Miles Sanders' numbers earlier, and he's had 15 plus rushes in almost nearly every game except for one, and that was week 1 or whatever. And the efficiency is really not there. And you saw it against Arizona. He's still running into blockers and bouncing off and praying for a home run. And that's not an efficient way to run the ball. Kenny Gainwell, he gets the ball, he hits the hole, and he goes as far as he can, which is great. But Gainwell isn't a number 1 back yet. Possibly may not ever be. The Eagles are desperately in need of that Jay Ajayi trade. They desperately need that running back that could really just solidify himself in his offense and just be that equalizer. That's exactly what they need right now.
Well, how do we feel about the way that Trey Sermon could fit into this rotation?
I would love for them to give him a couple carries. I feel like we haven't really seen much of him.
Not at all.
He had exactly 2 carries, I think, against Jacksonville, right?
Yeah. He did. I think he made his debut against Jacksonville. So correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be something that develops as the year goes on. I kind of wonder more about Trey Sermon's long-term potential in Philadelphia.
Mm.
If he's the kind of guy that you bring back on, short-term deals, lower, small deals, and perhaps he's a guy who can contribute to a committee in years going forward. Miles Sanders, in all likelihood, will not be back next season.
Certainly
So
not.
you really have to think, well, what is the team going to look like at running back? Kenny Gainwell is going to be here. You don't know if Boston Scott's going to be here or not. He very well could be. I would even hope that he is here because you want some semblance of consistency at that position. But beyond that, you would necessarily, you would possibly want Sermon in as another back. It depends on if you go through free agency. I think they're probably going to draft a back. I'm almost sure that they're going to draft a back. Just
Would you give up
what style of back.
the Saints pick for Christian McCaffrey along with another future?
Absolutely not.
No, you really wouldn't?
No, I wouldn't. I would absolutely not do that.
I'm curious to hear why. I mean, okay, aside from injuries, why?
So obviously there's injuries, but you can make the case that if you have McCaffrey and Sanders kind of sharing the spotlight, that's less opportunity for McCaffrey to.
Oh no, you move Sanders. I mean, if you're getting McCaffrey, you got to move Sanders.
Yeah, I was.
Well, you're talking about for this season, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about for this season. Absolutely.
So you're talking about Sanders and that pick for Christian McCaffrey.
Well, it's going to take a lot more than that, but I'm saying, like, would you welcome McCaffrey being an
I
Eagle?
don't have interest in what it's going to take to get Christian McCaffrey. So that first round pick, I find to be.
Never mind. I understood it a little bit differently.
I very much value that first round pick, if I'm being honest with you. Not that I'm not willing to trade it, but if I'm going to trade it, I'm bringing in a pass rusher. So that it needs to be a position of absolute importance. You can get backs who are obviously not as good as Christian McCaffrey, but still very good for much less. So when you look at the total value, you lessen what you're giving out. You bring in a complimentary back to Miles Sanders. Your running game can still look phenomenal, and you still have that first round pick. So it's not necessarily something, we heard, and he's hurt now, but Damian Harris, we heard rumors about him possibly being up for trade earlier in the season. That may or may not still be on the table. I look around, look for other backs. I get it with Christian McCaffrey. Is he a free agent after this year?
That's what I was just about to look up, so stand by.
See, but my thing is,
because I know that he has a big bonus that's already been taken care of by Carolina. So there's not necessarily that concern. So he actually has 3 more years.
so he's still under control. What's the price?
It's right. So the base salary is over. It's about $12 million every year.
A little steep.
So yeah, and you're gonna have room. You're gonna have room because there's a lot of free agents, but you're gonna have to replace those players that you're losing. So I don't necessarily want, like, the whole thing with not wanting to re-sign Miles Sanders is that I don't want a pricey running back. So I get it. He's Christian McCaffrey. I still don't have interest in giving up Sanders, giving up the first round pick, and possibly even more for a guy who's as oft injured as Christian McCaffrey. It's the same reason I wouldn't trade for him in fantasy football either. And obviously NFL fantasy football, completely different things. That's not the argument that I'm making here. But when you look at it, Christian McCaffrey is exactly the kind of guy who is always going to cost more than the production he's going to give you. And it is just not worth it. It's not worth it. If you're the Carolina Panthers, it's totally fine. If he's on an expiring deal, it's definitely something worth pursuing. But unless you are a team like Buffalo, for instance, who that's kind of your glaring weakness, then it doesn't really make sense for you. And even Buffalo now, they could pivot and go safety when you go to deadline acquisitions. Now that Micah Hyde's out for the year, so it's not something that I'm into. High price deals for pricey running backs. It's just not something that I believe in personally.
See, but then you mentioned a pass rush, and I feel like there's a little bit of a logjam at defensive end right now for them to acclimate somebody else, and as much of a logjam that there is at defensive tackle. I mean, you have Hassan Reddick who's finally come into his own. You have Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. Yeah, you'll take away from Patrick Johnson, and then defensive tackle Jordan Davis coming to his own. Javon Hargrave is still there. Milton Williams, Fletcher Cox.
If you add a talented pass rusher, I'm not concerned about Jackson or Johnson losing snaps. I definitely think that he's kind of the odd man out. So if you kind of go with a 3-man rotation on the edge, and Brandon Graham's still on the edge too, you know, we can't forget that. Obviously, in a lot of sub packages, he's working his way inside. But you know, when you look at the defensive edge position, Hassan Reddick is constantly flipped back and forth if they're playing a 4-3 or a 34. So there's some times where he's kind of not in. Sometimes he's in coverage, unfortunately, but not necessarily in coverage. But he's playing it back as opposed to the edge position. So that opens up opportunities for an edge rusher. Brandon Graham, obviously, he's still talented. He showed that just a few weeks ago, but he is a guy who you kind of want to save a little bit for the playoffs. Josh Sweat is another kind of guy. If he somehow, some way hears this, he might be upset because he's gotten upset about stuff like this before. But injuries will be a concern until they're not for Josh Sweat. He's been very healthy. He's been very great, right? And that's fantastic. I hope it stays that way. It's never a bad idea to have a safety valve just in case something should happen to him. So really, the only guys on the defensive end, you know, position who I know they're certified to get snaps, it's Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, and Hassan Reddick. So in my mind, there's definitely room for another guy to get snaps on the outside.
That's fair. That's very fair. All right. Well, outside of our trade ideas,
yeah, let's pivot back to Dallas.
It is Dallas week.
So, man,
it's not the trade deadline yet.
We went on a tangent, man. There's gonna be a lot more. There's gonna be a lot more where that came from. This is only going into week 6, so we got all this. Whew.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have a great trade deadline primer. That's for sure.
This is gonna be fantastic. But
it's gonna be all day special. No sleep.
So we spoke a little bit about kind of the worries about the offense of the Philadelphia Eagles being one-dimensional. One thing I'm not worried about is our defensive game against the Cowboys. Of course, Elliott and Pollard stand out to me as on this Cowboys team, and by this Cowboys team, I mean with Cooper Rush as your quarterback. This Dallas team, Elliott and Pollard are the big weapons. If we could clog up the running lanes, Jordan Davis and company, and I mean Jordan Davis and company because that's kind of what we got Jordan Davis for. If we can,
Jordan Davis is the company,
right? You know, Jordan Davis and Biz.
Yes.
But you know,
he takes up 3 gaps just standing out there.
Exactly,
it's huge, bro.
If we can, if they can kind of put a cat on that offense, are you thinking that the Eagles sort of answered back after that performance against Arizona, which wasn't necessarily bad, but it wasn't necessarily like they put the lock on the game? I want to see a performance more so how it was against Justin Jefferson and company.
I want to see the Eagles defense put the Cowboys on their ass.
Like, that's what I want to see too. I want to see CeeDee Lamb not have anything to brag about.
Exactly. I don't want no prevent defense. No, I want to see bully ball. I want to see guys in the trenches getting to the quarterback. I want to see the running back being scared to get to the line of scrimmage. I want to see
a lot of man and blitz.
Yeah, just play your, and that's the key thing. Play to your strength. Your strength is that. Like, you have the players that you wanted, that you specifically wanted for your non-scheme scheme. You have them. Use them to their strength. Use them to your strength. Just do what you've been doing. Don't get cute. Don't get extra. Just do what you've been doing. Call it a day. Offensively, if I'm Nick Sirianni, I'm walking into the room with some big owners and be like, listen, this is how we're gonna do this. We're going to be in sync the whole way offensively, because last week it just wasn't it. We can't afford to make mistakes this time around. Grab your team by the balls and just run with it. Like, this is your team at the end of the day. You need to make sure that everything's running as seamless as possible, and that offense was not as seamless at all, especially when you have $100 million wide receiver not getting the ball in screen passes or not getting the ball in areas of where he succeeds in.
Yeah, it's time to get back down to basics, back to fertilizing the flowers, That's really kind of what they have to buy back into, and that's on both sides of the ball. Offensively, yes, running the ball, definitely something you got to get Miles Sanders involved more. Hopefully Boston Scott's healthy. Do we know what's even going on?
Bring back the ghost of Jordan Howard, damn it.
Yeah, honestly, like bell cow your way right through there. It's definitely something that's going to have to be a focal point for them. On top of that, I don't know. I don't know how much Jalen Hurts is going to be rushing personally. and I'm more than okay with that. But
Mm.
if you really kind of focus on that, methodical, beat down their will kind of offensive approach, that bodes really well for your offense. And then defensively, I think is where the real advantage is. You talked about the rushing attack for Dallas, Eric. Jordan Davis, who's the first name that you mentioned, Jordan Davis has been an absolute monster this season against the run. He's been
one of the top defensive tackles in the league against the run, if I'm not mistaken.
He's been everything they could have asked for and more, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's been an elite run defender. On top of that, because of the attention that he gathers, he not only stalls running backs in the backfield, but he also improves the pass rush on the flip side as well when he's out there, which he's been like as an individual, he's been better than expected as a pass rusher. He's not Aaron Donald out there, but he's been better than expected. But it's more than what he does as an individual. It's about how he also impacts the other players around. Because again, he takes up so much attention. That frees up guys like Fletcher Cox. That frees up guys like Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat to be able to work their way past the offensive line towards the quarterback. So it's all going to be about stopping the run first and foremost. So look for a hopefully big game out of Jordan Davis. And I'd say TJ Edwards in the second level as well. Those are going to be two players that I'm going to be watching come Sunday night. And then if they can stop the run, make Cooper Rush throw the ball. Because if you make him throw the ball, that's a key to victory right there.
Mm-hmm. So through 5 weeks, Jordan Davis, according to PFF, is the highest graded rookie defensive lineman.
I saw it right from the beginning when we looked at Math Bomb and his RAS system. Everything was green. He's performing like everything's green. So I like it.
A rare perfect 10.
That was incredible when I saw that card pop up.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy's going to be a monster. And then to see it translate in real time on the field. Yeah. We can talk about a rivalry game and winning between the trenches. You're a lot more confident when Jordan Davis is on the field.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that. And we actually saw uptick in Nakobe Dean being on the field as well. I mean, I noticed that Edwards was not looking great in the passing game. So for them to give Dean more snaps was pretty great to see as well.
The Cardinals have to be the worst matchup for TJ Edwards. When you think about it on two different levels, one, they have some of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL, right? So between Rondell Moore and of course Hollywood Brown, just absolute speedsters on the outside. On top of that, you have to, whether he's a true spy or a fake spy, you always have to have someone aware of where Kyler Murray is, and that is absolutely not his game. TJ Edwards. Now he's looked much improved as far as his speed, coverage ability, absolutely much improved this season. However, going all the way as to playing against the Arizona Cardinals, that's a little bit kind of too far of a step. Now, against Dallas, I think that you're probably going to see a little bit more Edwards, a little less Dean in that situation.
Yeah.
Just because you don't really need to. Now, if Tony Pollard starts kind of going off, then you might be able to see a little more Nakobe Dean.
It's going to be a spicy one. So, I mean, we might as well roll out the red carpet, guys. I mean, we're at the 48-minute mark. Podcast is coming to a close. I think for the most part, we've done pretty well with our predictions, except for a group of guys that predicted the Vikings to beat the Eagles, which I was
never
not
did
part
in my
of.
life.
What is a Viking?
What is a Kirk, and who's his cousin? So who wants to start it off? Little flipping the birds roulette.
No, I'll go first, and I'll leave off right where I did last week. I'm full confident. You know what? Bench Jalen Hurts, put in Aaron Sipos as the quarterback. Eagles by 30. There, I mean it. Eagles by 30. 30-0 Eagles.
You're gonna be punting with the wide receivers.
No, I mean I'm very excited for this game. If I could give a proper analysis of it, and for what it's worth, analysis used loosely, but I do believe I do believe that the Eagles defense is gonna play tighter. And as we alluded to a lot earlier, this is a purpose game. This is one that it's gonna be a statement that's gonna be made on home turf against a hated rival. Philadelphia, they're going to carry this momentum through the bye week and come back. It has to happen now. So this is going to be a season-defining game. I'm still going to take Philadelphia. Let's call it 30-13 Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. When I look at this game and I look at Dallas is currently tied for 24th in the league in points per game. So it's not an overwhelming offense, obviously. They really kind of focus on capitalizing on the opponent's offensive mistakes and also just running the ball down the throat of the other team. So when I think about Dallas's approach to the game, when I think about Philadelphia's approach, ability, and how they should counteract Dallas, I think this isn't going to be the highest scoring of games, but I do think that Philadelphia will still dominate. So I'm thinking 24-10 Birds, and it's going to be a big time of possession game.
I'm bringing back the Game of Thrones. Week by week, man. Jalen Hurts sitting in a stone cold room by himself, putting himself to sleep, mentioning Trevor Lawrence, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray. List goes on and on. And Cooper Rush is going to be, my opinion, will be the next victim of this list. It's the Jalen Hurts game. Sunday Night Football. We're in Philadelphia. They're most likely going to rock the black helmets with the all black jerseys, full blackout. Own it. Own the moment. Like, this is your chance to really show, like, hey, this is Philly and this is my turf. I think the Eagles actually do cross past 24 points, and I think they hold the Cowboys to 17. So I'll go 24-17 just to be safe. But it's gonna be a really Philly-esque game, I'm hoping.
When you talk about the list, on that list was Cooper Rush's name actually ahead of.
You know what it is? They had Dak Prescott with an asterisk, and in the terms and conditions at the bottom it says, if injured, Cooper Rush is the 12th best quarterback in the league.
I was gonna say, I was like, that would just be rude.
I Zach was talking.
Just be rude.
Cooper Rush was not on the list, guys. We're safe. He was not on the list for.
Oh my God!
I checked the list, but he probably was in the fine print in terms and conditions. I'm pretty sure he snuck him in there. But yeah, luckily we have everybody has the Eagles winning this one. I would hope that Morgan on his sick bed right now, he has the Eagles winning. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, any last hot takes?
Have we mentioned the Jason Peters angle yet?
Is he playing or is he out? Because did he have like a pec injury?
Oh, did he have a pec injury already?
Last week.
I was gonna say he suited up. I think he suited up to start, but yeah,
my guy Jason Peters is the king of bereavement, man. That guy, bro.
I swear he does it just so he doesn't have to practice. Right. So yeah, he's questionable. He may or may not play, but in any case, he will be there. His presence will be well present. So and any thoughts about him returning to Philadelphia, just as that is a story? A lot of guys probably going to be going over talking to him before the game, a jersey swap after the game with a guy who didn't even play. I mean, they did a jersey swap with Doug Peterson, so it is possible. It is possible if Jason Peters doesn't play, there's still a jersey swap. Is it okay for them to kind of treat him like a friend, or since it's Cowboys, all bets are off and, you can talk next day or whatever, but not Sunday?
If you ask me, I'm hiding, I'm going to hide behind a rock after I say this, because Jason Peters is probably 7 feet tall compared to me.
He's a big dude.
He's a really freaking big dude.
Multiple times spoken to him in person. He is a big dude.
There's no friendship when you have a star in your helmet. You lost your legacy as an Eagle, okay? That's how I'm going to put it at right now. You stole money from us.
He already embezzled money from the Eagles, and then on top of that, he goes to Dallas right
He's
after.
Worse than Bobby Bonilla.
But now, if he does kind of, linger through the season on Dallas's payroll, he's then embezzling from Dallas. So is that kind of in the plus column for Jason Peters?
I'll turn my hat off if that's the case. But
also, Brian, Bobby Bonilla is a hero in Philadelphia. So
I love Bobby Bonilla.
I don't know why you're complaining.
I hate you guys.
I love Bobby Bonilla in the same way that I love Jason Peters, because now he's doing it to Dallas. It's great. It's fantastic. Also, he got us a ring. Why would I hate that? You guys are looking at this all wrong. My 2 cents. Dallas sucks. Go Birds.
So you said go Birds prematurely, and
I had
really
to.
quick,
I had
It's
to. It
Dallas
made
week. People
sense
got
this time.
excited. People
It
get
made
excited
sense
on
this
Dallas
time.
week.
I'm not taking it back.
before the podcast started, I want to state this live for everybody to hear this. Yes, my Mets did lose, but I swear on everything I love, if the Phillies don't beat the damn Braves, I will lose my mind because there's nobody that I hate more in this world than the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, we already saw home field
man.
advantage, so that's one step on the way there.
I'm just saying, like, play that to the golf course.
We have one
Eric,
question in the chat before we cut off.
I think you have something on your ear, Brian. Check out Eric's ear. I think there's something on it. Yeah, Brian gets it.
I don't get it. Oh well, I'm a meme now.
The buck stops there, okay, Zach?
God darn it.
Broster B has a couple questions really quick, and I feel like we got to talk about this last part. So, does Coach Sirianni trust Hurts to throw the long ball? Yeah, I completely believe he does. But this part, and what do you guys feel like the passing touchdowns argument? People have been doubting Hurts because of a lack of passing touchdowns. This is all stemming from the gentleman at was it Jacob, Dan that's what he's part of.
Oh, Jakob?
Is that what you say, Jakob?
Is it Jakob? Is it Jakob? I don't really know.
I don't know, but Celio
I'm getting sick and tired of Dan Celio. That's all I know.
He's a mad man tweeting all these crazy things. Like
Gosh.
it doesn't matter. Like
He's an angry man in a bunker.
It doesn't listen. As
I-
long as the
and
Eagles are
I'll say
winning and
that
Jalen Hurts is
square.
putting up numbers, I wouldn't be concerned about passing touchdowns right now. I mean, he's getting the ball into the hands of the receivers. It's all gonna, at the end of the year, the only thing that matters is total touchdowns, in my opinion, at least.
It's just like hockey. I mean, do you care who scores, or do you care that a score happened? I don't care who scores.
I mean, even when you look in the red zone, they're a top 10 team in red zone efficiency. So it's not as if they're not scoring. Like they where are they among all teams in points per game? They're top 5, and then they're top 10 in red zone efficiency. So I don't understand what the problem is.
I mean, as long as you're getting in there, no one's saying that you have to pass. And if you don't, like if you can get in there 8 out of 10 times rushing the ball, that's pretty good. I like it.
The Eagles are top 5 and number 5 in points per game. The only teams above them: Baltimore, Detroit, Buffalo, and Kansas City.
Actually, this is
I mean, and that's kind of not surprising. Detroit's kind of like the one team where you're kind of shocked, but they've just been all offense all the time in Detroit this season.
And our quarterback drags defenders into the end zone. Okay.
Yes.
So have some respect on that.
Honestly,
that's a bulldozer. But yeah, it's Dallas week, so guys, make sure you make all the noise as possible. We'll be back next week to hopefully tell you that the Eagles are 6-0 on their bye week, and maybe a pretty big podcast for next week. But who knows? Let's see how Sunday turns out. Other than that, I'm Brian Cameron. He's Eric Reese, alongside Zach Chav. Damn it, Eric, you're in my head. Chavalella.
You gotta go with the confidence. That's it.
I told you what it was. It was Chavalella.
Yeah, Eric got it.
So when I said it, I heard Eric in my head, Chavo Guerrero.
I
didn't want to say Chavo Guerrero.
Zach Chavo Guerrero. See, almost. Anyway, rough edit. Go Birds.
Yes, sir.